Hi, I'm Teresa Lisum, and I'm with my amazing guest co-host, Tina Spoletini, and we're evolving women. I'm evolving, you're evolving, we're all evolving. So let's help each other to evolve. And our intention here today is to fill the world with uplifting messages, new perspectives, tools, resources, wellness ideas, mindset shifts, things you may never have considered before, but juicy gems to chew on. And we're here to give you permission to be your best self and live your best life. So welcome. We're so glad you're here. Welcome to Evolving Women. We're so glad you're here. And I want to again introduce and say a warm welcome to Tina Spoletini. Thank you so much for being here and talking with us and engaging in deep, interesting conversation today.
Yeah,
So
thank you. No, thank you
appreciate
for having me.
Sure. So we are going to look at, dissect, jump into the idea and the concept of solitude with confidence. So just saying that phrase to our viewers and our listeners, what do you feel when you hear that? Solitude with confidence. Is that something that sounds really, really foreign to you, or is it something you can embrace? Like, I have some mixed feelings about it. So what about you, Tina?
Yeah, I think it could be, we can see, the negatives with confidence is just, knowing that you can be alone. It's positive and negative, right? Some of us don't like to be alone with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us only want to be alone with ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so there's a
good and bad
spectrum.
either way.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. There's
That's
a
right.
spectrum.
Yeah.
And maybe it's situational. Maybe it depends on the situation as to whether you want to be alone or choose to be alone. And some people don't choose to be alone. That's what happens at any point in their life or certain points in their
Absolutely.
lives. But having confidence in being alone, like having that self-assurance, that trust in ourselves, and the permission to know that it's okay to be alone. I mean, I don't know if society kind of makes it seem like, ooh, if you're alone, like, ooh, I feel so bad for you. Like, oh, that's just a sad state of affairs that you're by yourself. Actually, my husband said that the other day when we were at a restaurant about some people there by themselves. I said, well, that's not a big deal. There's lots of different reasons for them to be by themselves. I've gone to a restaurant by myself. It doesn't bother me any, like I have my little thing and I read or whatever. But it's almost can have a negative connotation around it, depending on the group or the time or whatever. Thoughts on that?
Person that you're going to be alone with the most is yourself.
Yes.
Right. And so if you can't be alone with yourself, I think we need to learn how to be alone with ourselves. It's funny, my daughter and I went for breakfast yesterday, and it was in the restaurant was in a old, like a seniors living building, and it was a public restaurant, anybody could go, and we were the only table in there. And then we see this, older lady, and she came in with her walker. She sat down, the waitress came and, took her order and came back to her 5 minutes later. It was noon, it was, sometime between 11:30 and 12.
Yeah.
And the waitress came back with a glass of red wine for this, older lady.
Yeah.
She had to be in her 80s, maybe 90s. She was old. And I was watching this little lady, with this glass of wine, and it was like a 9 ounce. It was not just a little taste, right? And I thought, that woman loves being alone because she's comfortable sitting in a restaurant by herself, ordering a glass of wine. She had a stack of it looked like an iPad with a book and a phone. So she was obviously doing something for her mind as well as enjoying a glass of wine at noon.
Oh, that's so cool.
I thought, this is great. Just, like, good for her, right?
Oh,
Because
heck yeah.
I couldn't do that today. I could go to a restaurant today, but I don't think I could order a glass of wine on my own.
Yeah, I don't know, because I'm not a wine drinker, but I think I would be able to. I don't know if I would think twice about it. If I wanted some, I'd probably order it.
Well, and maybe, I mean, I'm not a big drinker myself either. So to go to a public restaurant and order a glass of wine by myself, I don't think I would. Right. But, I don't have a problem being alone. Now I will be honest and say, probably pre-COVID, I wouldn't have said the same thing. Right. And I learned that about myself. I liked my space. Right. I learned that I really like being by myself. I prefer it almost. Wow. And I don't want to say that really out loud, because I don't know how to explain it, but I feel kind of like I choose being alone more than I don't. Right. And that is definitely since, the lockdown, because my house was quiet and I enjoyed that. Wow. Right. I really did enjoy it. And yeah. And I think it was just timing, right? My kids were older and they were busy doing their own thing. They were still living at home, but doing their own thing. Yeah. And so I had more time to myself. And I actually learned that I can enjoy being alone. I can do whatever I want, right? I can think what I want. I can listen to what I want. I can watch what I want, and now I kind of feel like you're invading my space. Right? I mean, not always.
You're like protective, maybe, of, or discerning.
Yeah. And that's new to me. That, that is definitely new to me. So,
well, as a mom, with kids, you're just so used to having them in your space. Can't even go to the bathroom without a kid, So
I remember those days.
Me too. So, I still have some of that with my grandkids. Like, can I have some privacy here, please? Oh, but I digress. I'm sorry. Maybe that was too much information.
Not at all.
But even kids, if they are in a big family unit, they are used to having, a bunch of people around and always commotion. So that is maybe a learned way of being. And when you said you learn to be alone, so it's almost like it's a skill that can be learned. So if you're maybe afraid of being alone, you could do it in little baby steps, go to a restaurant by yourself and then do something else by yourself. Go to another town by yourself, like kind of stuff like that. Push your comfort zone out a little bit at a time, but it can be learned. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, I didn't even know. Like, my mom always used to laugh and call herself a hermit, right? She could sit and read and not answer the phone and not talk to anybody for days. She loves being alone. And I always thought, well, that's wrong. There's got to be something wrong with her, right? Because I really like people and I need people. I'm a typical extrovert, right? Like, I need people around me to be my best self. And for my mom doesn't need that at all. Right. In fact, I think it works the opposite for her. When there's too much people, it's too much chaos for her. Yeah. And so I could never really understand what that meant. I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me. But, of course, now I'm like, I get it. And I don't know if that's because, the older I get, the more like her I become, or if it's just something that, like I said, with COVID, we had no other choice but to learn how to be alone. And so I wonder sometimes if that's what it is, or if it's genetic, or if that's the cycle of life. Maybe we all like, because the potential for us to live alone at some point in our, in our older age is pretty high, right? Like, it's a pretty high chance, right? And so maybe that's sort of part of the cycle. I don't really know, but that's where I am now.
And I think there's different layers to it. again, depending on where you're at in your life and what's going on. But I love that you said that you like people energize you, but yet your mom, it almost de-energizes her to be around a lot of people. And so from my understanding of people's strengths, there's 4 domains. And one of them is relationship building. And if you're a relationship builder, which it sounds like you are, people energize you. Like that's like me. I need people to be my best self, be productive, feel creative, get my ideas. So that's why I love collaboration and I love this type of conversation. But yet I personally need to balance it with my alone time. So yes, people energize me and I love that, but I can't be on all the time. I can't be in that high energy 24/7. And then it's, gets tiring. But yet I have to balance it with my own alone time. And then there's people that are predominantly in their head people, strategic thinkers that want more time alone than with people. So maybe your mom was a strategic thinker, and so she needed that. She was very productive in her own head, but to see her moving or just sitting, you might think, well, that's why is she not doing anything? Like but so there are different types of people. And I've come to understand that through my knowledge of strengths. It's just the way we're wired in our brain. And that has allowed me to be less judgmental and give other people some more grace. And we're all different. We're all meant to be different. We all don't need to be put in, these little conforming boxes, which society seems to want to do to us.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we need to say that out loud to the people in the back that didn't hear us, right?
Yeah,
but that, I mean, I think that is normal, right? To not, like to judge people that are not the same as us, right? But I mean, truth be told, if we were all the same, we would have a world of chaos, like for real. I mean, it's chaotic with all the different people in the world. Can you imagine if we were all the same? Like, it just can't happen, right?
Well, plus it'd be boring. It'd be boring if everybody was the same,
boring.
like, oh, come on. Need some excitement. But maybe if we were in that world, we wouldn't realize that. So
yeah, we wouldn't, because we would all think the same, right?
Right. But I learned a new word just in the last month or two, and I hope I'm saying it right because I just am doing this from memory. An ambivert. So there's an introvert, an extrovert, and an ambivert. Have you ever heard of that?
Okay, so no, I've never heard that. So is that like a combination of both?
Yep.
Okay.
So I've kind of taken that for my own self, an ambivert. I love people. Like I said, they energize me, but yet I know I need to balance it and equalize it with my own thought processing time. So depending on the situation, if the group's really big, blah, 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 I might slip into that introvert. But if it's people that I want to be around and whatever, then I could turn on the extrovert. So I kind of feel like I'm that in between, either or.
Yeah.
But that's
I think I can relate to that too.
Yeah. And that was interesting. I had never heard that. And then I heard it like twice within a week. Like, oh, is that a thing?
Yeah, so from 2 different people. So it's a real word.
Yeah,
it is like
evidently it is. But I think this is a good conversation because we do have to know ourselves. Like, people energize you. I know that I need to have a balance between downtime and people time. And I mean, it took me a while to learn that and to understand that. So self-awareness and self-understanding is huge so that we know what we can maybe move towards, or I don't even know where I'm going with that. I kind of have an idea in my head, but I'm not putting it into words right now. So maybe I need to let that go.
It's all well, I mean, there's so many different times where we need to be alone, right? I mean, now I'm on this journey of self-development. So I
Mm-hmm.
get where being alone is like important, right? Because you can't really be aware of your true thoughts if you don't
Mm-hmm.
take a minute to really go, what was I just thinking? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
did that mean? And where do I want that to go?
Yeah, I love
Right.
that. It doesn't take that long. I mean, literally, you can just, like you said, stop for a few seconds and think about what just happened, what was just said, what your decision might need to be, instead of just constantly going without taking that little bit of thinking time. Um, so yeah, I love that. And again, I was going to say something else about being alone. Like I said, we're all going to do it at some point. It depends on the length of time, but just trusting in the fact that we can be alone. It's okay. Don't be afraid of it. That was it. Like, are we afraid of being alone for whatever reason? Afraid of being alone with our thoughts for whatever reason? Could that be part of it?
Yeah, I think so, 100%. Right? People that are really negative and, critical, and they're judgmental on everyone else. Well, when they're alone, who are they going to judge? Who are they
Good
going to
point.
criticize? Right. And so those kind of people, I mean, they're energy suckers, right?
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
those people need the other people in order for them to be at their
Mm,
highest. Right. And a lot of those people, they're almost addicted to being negative.
yeah. Wow.
Right. Right. And so those kind of people need to be with other people because they're not going to like judging themselves.
Mm-hmm,
God forbid if I see the negative things I see in you in
mm-hmm.
myself.
Right.
Right.
Wow. So it's almost like that self-projection. Um,
Right.
wow. Yeah, that's huge. But I guess we're here to give everybody permission to be alone. It's okay. Embrace it. Learn from it. Like you said, it's a skill that you can learn
Mm-hmm.
and trust that you're going to be okay by yourself. Just really trust in your guidance, your intuition, your own insights, and just allow that to move you forward. Because I know I have self-doubts. Like I said, we were sharing before we hit record about some women that can go travel by themselves and they don't think anything of it. But the one friend of mine, she had to kind of like push her comfort zone out a little bit at a time before she was able to travel farther distances. I remember this was years ago. We were going around Lake Tahoe and we were in a parking area, and this big old, it wasn't a huge RV, but it was pretty substantial. And we had met this lady out looking at the lake, and here it was her RV. She was like 80 some years old, and her husband had passed, and she wanted to go travel the states. She wanted to travel the country. She had certain things she wanted to see. And she's like, nobody would come with me. So I just decided to go myself. And
Wow.
it was like, oh man, that is so awesome. Like she was such an inspiration. And I guess you make that decision. Like, I'm going to go whether I'm comfortable with it or not. And I need to trust that I will be able to deal and handle anything that comes along. I can figure it out on the way, which is what we're doing in life all the time. We're figuring it out along the way. So
Isn't that
why not trust ourselves to figure out our physical travel journey on the way? And I'm not to that point yet, but I'm like talking to myself here.
well? And I think, I mean, not everybody is going to, travel alone, and not
Right.
everybody is
Yeah. Right.
expected.
I'm just
Right.
using that as an example. Yeah.
For sure. But I mean, the whole comfort zone, I mean, I think I was saying this to you before we hit record. Eventually, we are going to have to be alone. No, well, not have to be, but I mean, chances are higher that we're going to be alone eventually in our life. Yeah. And so isn't it better that we learn how to love being alone and love who we are now, so that when the time comes, you don't have to rely on someone else to keep you occupied and entertained, right? Right. I mean, that's the way I see it, right?
No,
you know,
I totally agree.
I don't know. Yeah, like, I mean, I think in general, women can be alone more than men can. Yeah. I'm not saying men can't be, but generally women will find something to do. Women are used to having, you know, lists and lists of to-dos, right? And so I think even in our old age, even if it's just, you know, I have to make sure I move those dishes into, you know, on that cup, whatever it's going to be, we'll find something to do, right? And I think that's what it comes down to, right? Knowing that I can sit by myself, you know, I can read a book, or I can, you know, even stare off into space, but I know my thoughts are going to be the thoughts I want to hear, right? And I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, I don't know. I am not, you know, I'm not alone that much, right? I don't live alone. I have still families living at home with me, right? And I, you know, sometimes picture myself, you know, when my grandma passed away, my aunt was living with her, but she was alone, right? And I think, like, how would I survive? How would I do that? How would I be alone, you know, all day, every day, day after day after day? How do you manage, right? But we have to.
Yeah, right. Again, you learn how to be alone. So it's not like you're born with, well, you could be born with it, but we have to maybe relearn it at some point in our lives. And I never really thought about that. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And when you said thoughts I want to hear, being alone with thoughts you want to hear, and then I went back to thinking about a person who's only got negative, critical, judgmental thoughts going in their own head. Heck yeah, no, I don't want to be alone with that type of a person, even if it is myself. So that does make sense. But that's a practice we can start at any point in our lives. Learning that self-love, learning that positive self-talk. And if we do it now, before we are forced into some alone time or choose to be alone, it's already a habit. It's already established for us. We've already got that going for us.
And really, you know, on that same topic, when you're around someone who's always negative and always like with those, you know, bad thoughts, when you're old, you don't have the filter or the patience for that. So even when you're old, people are not, like, it's even more apparent that people are not going to want you around. So you'll have more opportunity to be alone.
True. That is true.
And so, right. So it's better now to, okay, am I that person? Like, maybe I'm going to spend a couple of days alone and keep track of all the thoughts that come through my mind, so that I can change those thoughts before I turn into that old lady that's bitter and negative.
That's a good point too. Yeah. How do you want to leave this world? How do you want people to think of you? You know, that's a whole nother conversation.
Absolutely.
You know, like, do you want them to think of you as old and crabby and critical, or do you want them to think of you as joyful and loving and gracious? You know, like, that's how I want to be viewed once I pass from this world. But yeah, this has been interesting. I never would have thought we could have gone down all these different paths just from solitude with confidence.
Right.
Wow.
But it's funny that it went down kind of a negative road, right? I didn't really mean for that to happen, right? It's about awareness, right?
Well, and we get to choose. I mean, we get to choose when we do find ourselves in solitude. Are we coming into it confidently and boldly, going for that cup of that glass of wine? Are we going into it, oh, everybody's going to be looking at me, or I don't feel comfortable here, and can I handle this? You know, like, we get to choose which end of that spectrum we're on at any point in time.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, everything comes down to choice. And again, when I'm talking with people, I'm talking to myself as well. Like, remember this, remember this.
Don't we all do that?
And it is a constant practice. It's not a one and done thing. Anything we speak about, it's a constant practice we have within ourselves. That's where the self-care comes from and everything.
Absolutely.
But I think I'm going to offer an invitation to our listeners and our viewers to think, like I started the episode with, when we say solitude with confidence, like, how does that land for you in your body? Is it something you can change into a positive feeling? And just explore that within yourself and take some of the things that we talked about and bring them into your awareness and just see what you think of them. You might want to journal your thoughts around them or notice how you react when you are by yourself. So I guess that's my call to action. You have anything you want to add to that, Tina?
Well, I think, sit alone with your thoughts and really listen to them. Really listen to them and kind of weigh out, is this who I want to be?
Yeah.
Like in my future? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Wow. Well, I want to thank you, Tina, for bringing this whole topic to the table. Thank you so much. And then
thank
delving
you.
in a little bit deeper, I think we gave our viewers lots of things to think on. So I want to thank you so much for being my guest co-host. It's been delightful. I want to thank everybody for watching and listening. I'm going to invite you to watch for our other episodes. Go into YouTube, check them all out. Tina's got another one in there, another conversation that we had. So look for that episode, and we look forward to seeing you here again. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.